Welcome to Kaip, Cambodia's smallest province, 2 hours south of the town I grew up in, Phnom Penh. From a young age, I visited the ancient temples of Angkor. These structures were built for godlike kings, rulers of the Khmer Empire, which flourished from approximately 800 to 1400 AD. Walking through these ancient ruins made of stone were like walking through portals into a different time. The Khmer, skilled stonemasons, carved their history onto the walls of Angkor, telling stories of battle, conquest, and defeat with their Laotian and Siamese neighbors. When I was a teenager, I discovered a different type of ruin, physical remnants from a much closer past, the abandoned modernist villas of Kaip, which were constructed in the 1960s to 70s in the style of New Khmer architecture. As I explored these spaces as a teenager, reading their visual landscapes, I glimpsed a more recent history, which begins in the 1800s under French Colonial rule, when the region of Kaip was first developed as a port town and a weekend getaway for officers of the French Colonial administration and their families. In 1953, with the French in a weakened position after World War II, the young King Sihanouk declared independence and embarked on a development policy that would modernize his new kingdom. To do so, he appointed the French-trained Van Molivan as the state architect and head of public works in Cambodia. Influenced by architects like Le Corbusier, Van Molivan fused together Western and Cambodian vernaculars, creating an altogether new language called New Khmer architecture. In this short-lived period of less than 20 years, Van Molivan constructed the nation's most beloved monuments and buildings, like the Olympic Stadium, which was designed and built in 1963 in just under 2 years. During this time, Kaip's iconic coastline became a popular destination for a new class of urban Cambodian and Western elites. They called it Kaip-sur-Mer, the Cambodian Riviera, the Saint-Tropez of the East. Wealthy families and individuals constructed their weekend homes in the New Khmer architectural style, embodying the visions of the young modern nation. Sihanouk was widely revered in Cambodia until the late 1960s, when opposition to his rule intensified. His adversaries criticized his modernist ideals and westernized social and cultural practices. Meanwhile, the neighboring war in Vietnam was devastating villages and rural areas in the northeastern part of the kingdom. U.S. bombing operations dropped 2.7 million tons of explosives at the time, more than the Allies dropped in all of World War II. In 1975, the agrarian socialist movement that Pol Pot mobilized in the countryside took control of Phnom Penh, and the villas in Kaip were abandoned by their owners. The Khmer Rouge would last until 1979, claiming the lives of nearly 1.2 million Cambodians, a fourth of the population at the time, including my grandparents. Seen as manifestations of King Sihanouk's modernist agenda, Khmer Rouge soldiers scavenged the villa's interiors for any valuable material, doorknobs, tiles, and used them as storage facilities for arms or dried fish. Today, nearly 3 decades after the United Nations Transitional Authority ended its stewardship of the country, and despite having a new constitution, years of relatively free elections, and billions of dollars of foreign aid, Cambodia is effectively under single-party rule. And Kaip is Cambodia's fastest-growing tourist destination, due in part to this French colonial and nationalist modernist legacy. A recent initiative by the Ministry of Tourism has branded the town as an eco-tourism hub, and efforts are currently underway to recognize Kaip as a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Although some villas have been turned into boutique hotels, many more are being demolished, and the land on which they sit is far more valuable than the structures themselves. When I type Kaip Cambodia into Google Earth and hit enter, I'm transported to this seaside region. A window pops up on my screen which describes it as a coastal province in southern Cambodia known for its seafood and tropical islands. The relaxed provincial capital of Kaip, it says, has wide streets with crumbling villas that recall its former glory as a French colonial resort town. When I read posts like this one and the previous description, I wonder who is writing about Kaip's history, who is forming its identity, and through which lens are we viewing its landscape. At the same time, there's an urgency to document Kaip's modernist villas and their history. 30 years of war and neglect have exacted severe damage on the structures. Of the 200-some villas that were built in this time, roughly 80 of them remain mostly uninhabited and in a fragile state of impermanence, awaiting their fate while rising land values and a thriving tourist industry threaten their disappearance altogether. What will become of these homes when the land on which they stand is sold? What does home actually mean in this context, and who is defining it? Who defined it in the past? What will become of the people who inhabit them? How have they been reappropriating these spaces, and how could this inform a sustainable vision for Kaiep's future development? These questions won't be answered in this brief foray into Kaiep's inherited built environment. But I hope what it will create is a conscious dialogue about how, as a country, we can begin the process of reconciling with this traumatic landscape and excavate these histories in order to inform our understanding of the region's current context and future trajectory.